And we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Mike Ames Recruitment Show. As you can see, I am not Kirsty. I apologise for the disappointment. Kirsty is on holiday. I think she still finds herself at Luton Airport car park. I'm not sure.
Got a good thing I know when she's there, I tell you. No eyebrows,
still got a tan somehow. Still got a tan. So today we are joined, in Kirsty's absence, by the man, the myth, the legend, Barry Cullen. Hello, Barry.
Hello, Pete.
Thank you very much. And we are joined by this guy, Mike.
It's this guy, who knows who Zaphod Beeblebrox was? That's what I want to know, because Mike Ames is just this guy, probably about like three people, I would think. Anyway, look, before we start, if you've got any questions, please put them in to the comment section. We will answer them for me or for Barry or for Pete if you particularly want to, although I can't think what you want to ask him. I don't know where he got that haircut from. And if you're watching a recording of this, you can email your questions there to mike@flair.co.uk. And if they're for Barry, I'll just forward them on to him, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay, now, we are so pleased to have Barry with us today because we're going to be talking a lot about getting retained work. And the benefits of that and why you should do it and so on and so forth. But Barry pointed out to me, I was telling him this some time ago, do you know there's a lot of danger associated with this? People going into retain but using contracts which actually aren't suitable for the job and can get themselves into a spot of bother. So Barry's here to talk about that with us, and I'm very pleased that you are. Now, Barry, is it safe to say your company, Reclaw, is really the lawyer of choice for the recruitment industry? You do fee disputes, you do litigation, and of course you do contract law, which is what you're here talking about today. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the way we position ourselves. We're called Reclaw. We're literally lawyers to the recruitment industry. So yeah, this is the only area we work in. And as you say, we do sort of commercials, so working on terms. We do dispute work, so fees and post-employment restraints, and then loads of employment stuff as well.
Okay, but today it's contract. That's what we're focusing on.
Yeah, because ideally the contract avoids the dispute. That's the idea. Get your contract right, you don't have to pay me money on the dispute.
That's the thought. Okay.
Barry makes his money either way. So right, Mike. Retained is the subject. It's still of interest for a lot of people. It's all about safety. But let's start at the very beginning, right? Let's talk about how and why is retained different from contingent in terms of delivery. What creates this potential for risk? Okay,
so I think most people know the answer to this. I think the benefits we want to dig into a little bit, but in contingent, it's like a race, really. You just set off and the winner gets the fee. The client or the hiring manager gives the vacancy out to several agencies, and off they go, running, doing their best to actually go and get somebody. And the winner gets the money and everybody else doesn't. Although interestingly, excuse me, the average conversion rate for contingent in this country is 1 in 5. If you're in white collar, it's nearer 1 in 3, but 1 in 5 overall, which means that you work all week, but you only get paid for Fridays. That's not really my idea of fun, quite frankly. And also, before I look in detail on retained and exclusive, if you're running a recruitment business, one of the aims that you should have is to increase revenues without increasing costs. Because when you do that, most of the extra revenue falls straight to the bottom line. So you become uber profitable. It's one of the things that we work with our clients to make them more profitable in a profit and lifestyle business. So one of the ways that you can do that is more of your vacancies end up in a fee. Right? I know it sounds pretty obvious, but that actually is a real big focus. Doing less and less contingency massively increases your profitability, which is only one of the reasons to do it. The other big reason as well, excuse me, is you're much more in control of the process. If you're in a contingent race, because that's what it is, there are some agencies out there that don't talk to candidates or contractors. They just whack in the CVs. And if they're in the inbox of the hiring manager, the chances are, even if they didn't speak to the candidate before they sent the CV, they're going to go with that agency, or it causes all sorts of disputes. And then you have Barry doing that, which is really nice. But if you're in control of it, exclusive or retained, then clearly, you're in control of that, and no one's going to do that to you, which is good. Shall I just very quickly talk about the difference between exclusive and retained?
I think it's worth touching on because I think it comes up a lot in the conversations we have with clients. There's a slight confusion between the two about what it is and isn't.
And then we're going to bring Barry in to talk about some of the risks associated with this. So retained means effectively you give us a vacancy and we work on it until we find somebody. I mean, there are usually some get out clauses, but that's pretty much it, really. We will go to market. We may use a budget. We may advertise. We may run campaigns. We'll do whatever we do to assemble a shortlist. We'll present the shortlist, and you have it. And normally, it is still relevant today. A third of the dough is upfront, so a third of the fee is upfront. A third when you present the shortlist, and then a third either when the acceptance is offered and the offer is accepted, or alternatively when the candidate starts. Right, it's either one of those two. I say when the invoice goes in personally, but I would. Now, retained is good if you are sure that you can fill the role, right? Because if you're doing contingent, you do your best and move on. Retained, you've committed to it, man, and I'm sure that Barry's going to talk about this in contract law in a minute. A middle ground is exclusive. It's basically saying, look, give us a month or whatever period you can negotiate, and we'll assemble a shortlist of the really best people that we can find, and then we'll present them to you, and you pay us then if you take one. You do pay a deposit. Don't get into that. There's no deposit on exclusive. No. There is a deposit. You might make it a fixed fee, like $4,000 or $5,000 or something, or you might make it a third. It's fine. But you're going to do some work, and I'm going to talk about how you sell these a bit later in this show, because it's really important how you present it and sell it, which is going to increase the chances of you getting exclusive or retained. But no, you're going to do the work. You're being paid for it, so that's fine, right? And then at the end of that period, if you haven't found anybody, they are free to go outside of you to find their person. That's pretty much how it works, really.
Okay, good. Very, very nice, concise explanation, Mike. I like it. I am just going to take 1 second before I come to you, Barry, to just point out we've had Justin, who has taken advantage of the comment system, not to ask a question, to just reinforce Mike's point there. Revenue increase without adding costs, profit, screw turnover, all about profit. But do feel free to drop questions in as we go.
Yeah.
If you have any, they'll be able to.
Please do, yeah. Also, can you tell us as well in the comments if you actually do quite a bit of retained or exclusive work? I'd really like to hear that as well. Or if you're all
really good. Barry, it all sounds great, but I think Mike kind of hit the nail on the head, especially when he was talking about retained. There's either an implicit or an explicit promise to find somebody and you're getting paid up front. So where are the downsides of both retained and exclusive, as Mike kind of outlined it? What do you see when it goes wrong?
Well, I suppose flippantly, one of the biggest problems with retained is that it doesn't get me much work, because because the likelihood of multi-agency disputes, the likelihood of backdoor hires, the likelihood of non-payment is significantly lower with retained, and therefore my phone rings less. If you split our work, if we're running 300 cases at a time, I would hazard a guess that about 10 of those are related to retained matters, and the other 290 are all in relation to contingent. So,
wow. Before you press on with this, Barry, what kind of disputes are there around retained? You've said there's quite a few, not very many, sorry, only a few. What kind of things would they be?
So it's often caused either by process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, I imagine, how someone has structured their product, their retained product. They sell it one way and their terms of business deal with it a different way. And therefore there's a sort of discrepancy in understanding between client and recruiter as to what's being achieved. Because you're right, Mike, structured one way, the client's effectively paying for certainty of a hire. Structured another way, you would be selling the search rather than necessarily the outcome. And therefore you would have, long stops, and you'd have provisions in there to ensure that you don't have to continue working the job forever until you fill it. So that can be where we see issues. One of the areas where there can be problems is cancellations. So where somebody wants to cancel a search because economic change, therefore they don't need the person anymore, or a change in project, or they lose a client, or whatever it might be, and therefore they no longer want the person, and therefore want to cancel the search or simply disengage from the search. So the client's not pulling their weight. The recruiter's doing all the heavy lifting, producing shortlists and putting people forward, but the client's just not engaging with the process, and therefore making it extremely difficult for the recruiter to finish the search. Those typically the sorts of issues. And then one of the others, you touched on exclusivity. It's a bit glib, but that all exclusivities are created equal, but some are more equal than others. We will frequently see on contingent. We will frequently see clients saying, "Yes, you've got this search on exclusive," and the recruiter will walk away from that thinking, "Great, I'm the sole source of candidates for them. I'm the only recruiter. I'm going to deal with their internals. They're not going to go and hire on their own." Whereas a client might interpret that as meaning, "Okay, you're the only recruiter we're giving this job to, but we're still doing our own internal searching. We've got our own advertising going on." Whereas retained will normally grip that up, and it'll be very clear within a retained agreement that if the client receives any direct applications or has any internal moves, then that's to be passed to the recruiter for the recruiter to manage, because you're retaining the recruiter to run the process, not just to source people. And of course, we've all seen it. Hiring managers say, "Yeah, sure, you can have exclusive," just like the last 3 recruiters I spoke to. And then we, but because the terms within contingent don't often deal with exclusivity very well, they don't set out those provisions very well. You will often have contractual challenges where you said, "Oh, you said you give it to an exclusive," and there's an argument as to what that even means.
That's interesting, because I think it also can stir up a hornet's nest of problems where you do have 2 people seeing the same thing but seeing it differently. Client sees it one way and agency sees it another, even if the client isn't purposefully misleading agencies, which I know they do, some of them, right? But if you're saying to candidates, "Yeah, we've got this exclusively," and they say, "Oh no, so-and-so spoken to us about this," or, "Well, no, we've seen it on the website, we've applied for it," it makes you look like you're not completely in control of what's going on. Well, you're not completely in control of what's going on, and I don't think that's good for your personal brand. And you can still get into disputes where people have gone direct and you put them forward as well, and then who gets the fee. So I think there are lots of opportunities for confusion and uncertainty in that scenario.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so quite a lot there to unpack. And Barry, I can see why we needed a dedicated lawyer working on these kind of things, because they're all subtleties, aren't they? And that's the trouble with contract. Now, we're going to come back to what people should do when these kinds of problems crop up. But first of all, I want to swing back to Mike to just dig in a bit more to retained and exclusive. Let's expand our understanding a little bit. What types of roles does it work best with? And when is it perhaps better to actually stick with contingent?
Actually, Pete, you made a good point there. After COVID, or during COVID, there was an explosion of retained. There's a series of consultants then coming on board saying, we can build a product for you and we can switch you across to retain. It's great, absolutely fantastic, worked really well. But there was kind of like a switch from being, well, everything is contingent to, oh no, everything is retained. And the truth of the matter is, some roles are better as contingent for the client, some roles are better exclusive for you and the client, and some roles, again, are better retained for you and the client. My first point is that you should choose the best solution for your client. So I had a client, and he was being pitched to by a trainer, and this person, he'd obviously hired someone to productize his training, right? So he got good, better, and best. It's a bit old-fashioned now, but at the time it was kind of leading edge stuff, right? So they've got the good, better, and best approach, and he clearly wanted to sell him the best because that's how he made more money. But my client had said, well, no, that's the right one for me. And actually, it was the middle one, weirdly. Now, the trainer may have just been trying to position that, but that's what he wanted. It suited his means best. So my first point is try and understand the client's situation. I'm going to dig into this in a little bit more detail in a second. Try and understand the client's situation and then choose the best solution for them. You are a recruitment consultant, and the operative word is consultant. they're consulting you and you're saying, well, based on what you've told me, I think this would be the best solution for you. So we have 4 products, which I'm not going to bore you with, but should excite you with, but we have 4 products and I choose with my clients what I think is the best for them based on their circumstances and their budget and their timeframes and what they want to achieve. I don't try and upsell them to the biggest thing every time. And that is a classic mistake that recruiters make. Everything's got to be up there, right? Now, you use contingent traditionally if it's a skill that there's plenty of it around, if it's a commodity skill, like a lower level skill, or if it's a skill that you wouldn't, even if you couldn't find anybody the traditional route, you could throw a stick into LinkedIn and you could get some names back, right? So those could be contingent. It's not a problem. You don't have to search too hard. You don't have to go too deep. The qualification isn't really that much. You're not going to put them through personality tests just to go into a warehouse, So that really, contingent is absolutely fine. The only way you could sell an exclusive or retained is if it was a batch, more than one, essentially. Then I think you can upsell justifiably because you need to control that process. That's absolutely fine. Exclusive is better for you if it's a skill or a role that you're not that certain of. So you're not certain that you can find somebody. And as Barry said, you don't want this to go on and on and on. Present a shortlist, not good enough, back to the drawing board. You can burn acres and acres of dough. I did some work with a client last year, and she was a headhunter herself, but she ran a small team of recruiters. And we worked out that one of her junior recruiters who was whacking $4,000, I don't know what they were, $4,000 placements in, like all day long, was making more money than her, that she was doing £15,000 to £20,000 placements just because of the amount of time that she needed to invest to get those shortlists together. So you need to think about the vacancy, the role itself, and be confident that you can do it within a reasonable stance. If you can't, then exclusive is a reasonable solution because they're going to pay you to do the research. Don't do it without any down payment. Really, do not do that. For a lot of the reasons that Barry mentioned earlier, disappear when the client has to put his hand in his pocket and sign a check for $4,000. It's like, oh, yeah. And especially if Barry's written your terms for you and it says if you take somebody from anywhere else, we still get paid. So it's up to you. If you want to take people off your website, absolutely fine. But we still get paid.
If I could chuck something in here as well to help, a lawyer's trick. If you get some money of somebody, it gives you much more certainty over the fact that they've agreed the terms, because otherwise why are they giving you money? And then secondly, if you think about the end game, if it all falls apart and you have a big dispute, you take them to court and you get a court judgment against them, one of the first things I want to do is freeze their bank account to make sure the money doesn't disappear. If they paid you some money, even if it's like 50 quid, 100 quid, 500 quid, like activation fee at the start, you now have their bank account details, so I can now go to court and get a freezing order against their bank account.
Sharing the dark arts, Barry. I love it.
Yeah, Barry, he's just lifting the lid now, isn't he? Lifting the lid. I love it, yeah. Okay, so the last thing on retained is if you think you can deal with it, if you can manage it. So best retained are niche, really, or if not necessarily very niche, you get some people, we only do C levels, or we do this or we do that, but it's quite niche. It's not give me everything and I'll do whatever it is in retained, because the secret to retained is to build up a network of people, candidates predominantly, or candidates that you can place but then will become clients, or clients that you work with who can become candidates. So there is this network, and the bigger that network gets, the easier that search becomes. And the better relationship you have with people in that network, the more they are likely to refer you on to other people. So the search becomes easier. I mean, I'm not a search consultant, so please don't ask me about the details of it all. But I know, because a third of our clients are search companies, so I know that there's a really big thing about focus. You're certain you're going to get it, and I'm going to talk about how you sell it in a minute. I know in a second or two, but actually, it's very important to choose the right solution for the client and for you. And that's the first thing. Don't just sell them the biggest thing you've got, because that's potentially opening Pandora's box for you.
It is indeed. It is indeed. I'm just going to drop into the comments very quickly because we've had one that I thought was pertinent now. Paul here saying that he expects to get paid and he's got his break fee in there, which Barry may or may not be one of your little tricks that you're going to share in a second. But I do not work for free anymore, and I think that reinforces what you were saying there. It's if you're going to do a good job, get paid for it. But then again, if you're just going to fire emails off to the ether, knowing that there's going to be about 20 fish that are going to leap into the boat that are all good enough. offer contingent because it is right for them and it can be right for you.
One of my clients published a video recently about this, and he said, well, imagine you're in one of those malls where they've got all the food, right, all there. And you say, you go to 3 or 4 restaurants and say, right, cook me a meal and then bring it to me. I'll be sitting at that table there. The person that brings me the meal first gets paid. Nobody else does. Well, for starters, none of the restaurants really do it. Why would they do that, really? And if they did, you've got to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Is the food going to be particularly good? The irony of this, right, I had a session with him yesterday. It was cancelled because he had food poisoning. I shouldn't laugh. I'm so sorry, but it made me laugh. I sent him a reference to that video. He hasn't replied. So
sacrifices he makes for marketing.
I know. Throw him on the bonfire of vanities. But the point is, you're absolutely right, Paul. No, you're a professional person. Tell people you're not a recruitment company. You're a professional services business, and you pay me for the work that I do. I'm going to talk about that in a second with you. So yeah.
We are. But I want to come back to Barry. That's why we've got Barry here. Oh. Barry. Go ahead with the point you were going to make, and then I'll ask my question of you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the love affair of contingent within recruitment, if you put that in place and imagine it in other industries, so contingent, non-exclusive. So what I do, I recover money for a living, right? And a lot of what we do is contingent. Yeah, so we don't get paid unless we recover money. Yeah, so that's a fairly significant part of the way we work. Can you imagine a scenario where I would say, okay, I will do it contingent, but 2 other lawyers will do it contingent first, and whoever gets the money, good luck.
Nobody would do that.
Just for our recruiter clients, it would make them look terrible because it would confuse the other side into, hang on a second, it just people's heads explode. So
madness.
The industry's love affair with contingent, non-exclusive just blows my mind. Always has done.
Well, I think, as I said earlier, for certain types of role, it's okay. It's absolutely fine. Lower level commodity roles, it's fine. You get these big businesses like Pertemps and Adecco and whatever, can just wheel them out. It's not a problem, really. It's no big deal.
I'm not challenging the contingent part. It's the contingent non-exclusive. That's the bit where I'm like, I don't know why, but it's just, for me, it wouldn't be worth my while.
No.
You know, if I've got a funnel, a hit rate where I know, right, this proportion of my cases I will win, therefore I need that amount of cases to make the money, why would I then dilute that into, and I have to fight against 3 or 4 other people?
But also, business planning is a nightmare. How much money, how can you make a forecast that's reliable?
It is. Lads, I think we all agree on this, but I am going to have to cut the conversation because I do need us to move forwards. Look at me being all Kirsty-like. She'll be so happy. Barry, let's say that someone hasn't worked with the most talented exclusive recruitment focused lawyer in the country to sort their terms of business out, and they have gone down an exclusive contingent, or they've gone down with a deposit, or they've gone down the retained model, and some problem has cropped up. So those 10 that you deal with on a periodic basis, what do people need to do? What are the things that people do wrong that make things worse for themselves in a knee-jerk way, and what are the things they do right that make your life easier?
The phrase. So people will often jump off the deep end. So I call it going nuclear, right? There's a big red button in the corner of the office and they hit it. They phone up the candidate and call them all sorts of things for going behind their back. They call up the client and say, I can't believe you've done this. I'm going to invoice you. If you don't pay in 7 days, I'm going to sue you. It's like that big knee-jerk emotional response, which is entirely understandable at a human level, but complete insanity from a trying to actually get paid perspective. Because all you're going to do, if you go completely off the deep end, is alienate the candidate who now hates you, make the client entrench. And if it's a hiring manager you're dealing with, they're going to push it to HR or legal or external lawyers or whatever it might be. Whereas if you had you taken a moment, taken a breath, and thought about it, and then approached it in a more balanced way, don't get me wrong, there are scenarios where going full throttle, 2 feet, studs showing into knees is suitable, but most of the time it's not. So Mike touched on it earlier. Most of our work does not come about because there's some nefarious scumbag out there trying to avoid paying recruiters. It normally comes about because somebody doesn't understand that they owe money, or they don't understand why what they've done doesn't comply with the contract that's in place. And dispute resolution, so what I spend my time doing is very similar to sales. You know, we'll have all anyone that's been in recruitment longer than 2019, or the advent of sales by email, will have heard the same phrase. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. Yeah, so that's a pretty old sales saying. Dispute resolution is much the same. You have in sales, you have to identify what their pain is, identify what their problem is, and then you've got to go and fix that problem. Yeah? Guess what? In dispute resolution, you have to identify what their pain is, figure out what the problem is, and go and fix that problem. It's the same thing. So you need to approach it in the same way. Approach it in a consultative way. You know, speaking to the candidate, I knew that was the job for you. That's why I put you forward. I'm so delighted for you. How did it come about? Yeah, now all of a sudden, instead of being an aggressive person, you're interested in them. And you're not going in saying, I'm owed money. Yeah, you're going in wanting to know how they got it. And they're going to say to you, oh, actually, funnily enough, you sent my CV over and they called me a week later. Yeah, you're getting intelligence, you're getting information that supports you. Whereas if you go really aggressive straight away, that's not going to work well. Likewise, exactly. Likewise, the client side, you know, if they come to the point of realization of, oh, I forgot Pete sent that CV over. If you go in full throttle, they're going to have to go on the defensive. Whereas if you go in on a, you know, you got James a join, brilliant. I knew she was great. That's why I introduced her. That will give an opportunity to go, oh, yeah, sorry, Pete. Didn't think about that. Yeah. Or, actually, Pete, no, I understand, but, you know, 3 months later, another recruiter introduced them to a colleague of mine. You know, it was completely unconnected to you. So you're not actually owed it. You're having a conversation. You're getting information that you wouldn't get otherwise. So, yeah, that's the key thing. Just don't go nuclear. Yeah. Don't go nuclear because you're the best opportunity to resolve it. And worst case scenario, yeah, you have a conversation with a candidate, you have a conversation with a client, you come to understand yourself that you're not actually owed the money for whatever reason. Guess what? You've still got a candidate that will work with you. You've still got a client that will work with you. Whereas if you go nuclear, you've lost the candidate, you've lost the client, and you're not going to get the money anyway, because the same factual and contractual environment exists where you weren't owed the money. But now you've just lost them as well.
My old business partner used to say, you catch a lot more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah.
And I think it's absolutely right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really lovely way of putting it. And the thing we say to people is, you know, it's easy to escalate something later. It's very difficult to de-escalate it. So if you go off the deep end and you go for them, it's very difficult to bring that back to a friendly conversation. Yeah. Whereas if you start with the friendly conversation and you don't like what you're hearing, or they're not engaging, or they're being difficult, or you don't believe them, you can always escalate later on. You can always then up the ante later. But if you go straight in for we're going to sue you, there's nowhere left to go apart from actually suing them. You know, and ideally you don't want to be in that world. I mean, obviously it's what I do for a living, right? But Barry
would be in that world, obviously, but
yeah, I quite enjoy it. But just think of the time it takes, right? The Ministry of Justice released some stats, which is quite boring, that sentence alone. But just think of the stats, right? I think it's something like, in small claims, anything under £10,000, the average time it takes for a case to go from the day it was issued to the final hearing is 53 weeks and 2 days.
Oh my God.
Yep. That's a lot of time and attention being pulled away from what you should be doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's small claims. They're quick. So fast and multi-track, so this is up £10,000 upwards, 78.2 weeks from start to finish. That assumes it goes the full duration to a trial. Most of them don't.
So that's why discussions and trying to resolve it through negotiation is the best way forward.
Exactly. And you use the word negotiation, which is suitable. Remember, negotiation doesn't necessarily have to mean a horse trade where you want your 20 grand, they want to pay nothing, and you come to a number in the middle. It could be true exclusivity on certain jobs. It could be retaining us on 3 or 4 jobs here and now, so that we know by the time we fill those jobs, we've done 3 or 4 fees, so we'll walk away from this one. You know, it could be some sort of pay and credit arrangement, whatever it might be. Yeah, negotiation isn't always a haircut on you.
Yeah, really good point there, Barry. I'm keeping half an eye on the time because I know we got a.
Yes, I've got to talk about how to sell it, haven't I?
We do. In fact, Gavin has already pointed out some people don't know how to sell it.
Well, I'm going to tell you.
They're here and they're watching Mike. He's going to share it. But first, we do have a little. We've been started doing this, and Mike, you got to be fast. we have a word from our sponsor.
Okay.
Because we don't have any sponsors.
Oh, that's me, isn't it? Yeah. We only do this because people say, well, what do you do? They watch the show. We've got no idea what we do. We are growth consultants. We work with small to medium-sized recruitment companies where the owners aren't happy with the income, the freedom, or the wealth that they're building, and they want to change. We have a range of different ways that people can work with us, from an online model through to a mastermind group, through to some private clients. The deal is that if you've got a problem, if you're not happy, just like Barry, we can talk. It doesn't cost anything to do that. If you'd like to do that, then you just email "tell me more" to me, and I'll happily set up a call with you and we can take it from there. Okay, Pete, that's me, the sponsor.
Excellent. Well, let's get back to our recommended channel. Mike, Gavin's question, how do you sell these things that avoid the problems Barry's kind of, so you don't have to take a deep breath because someone screwed you over?
Well, I just did take a deep breath. Okay, so I've only got 10 minutes for this, and I obviously can't go to massive amounts of depth, but it all depends on how you present what you're selling. Too many recruiters see the benefits for themselves. Of course, we just talked about them, but they can't articulate the benefits for the client. Client can't see it. Client think, well, that's all in your benefit, but not for mine. No, surely if I've got 10 agencies working on it rather than one, I'm going to get 10 times as many CVs. Why do you want me to just go with one? They have no idea. Your first role is to educate, not in a condescending way, because that's not going to end well, but in a nice way, to educate the client the benefits of going retained, which I'm going to share with you in a second, for them, right? Because if you can't do that, not only won't they pay the fee that you want, but also they're unlikely to give you the deal, particularly now because we're hearing that in some sectors, retained is becoming increasingly hard to win. Okay, now, whether that's, I don't think that's across the board. In fact, I know it's not across the board, but in some sectors it is. And who knows, as the number of jobs drop, and we've been told that they have for the first time in 2.5 years, then maybe it'll become even harder because the client's been bombarded with people who are saying, yeah, we can do that for you. We've got these CVs. So why go retained? I don't need to because CVs are coming to me. So I don't know, but it's really important. Now, at the heart of this lies a product. You must productize. It's very important. You're not selling a service, because actually what a service is, you're selling yourself, or the recruiter is selling themselves. That's the deal. They're saying, well, look, give me that work and I'll go and find these people and do this, that, and the other. No, because if you've got people who are less experienced and less knowledgeable, they may not have the gravitas or, in fact, the skills needed to sell that kind of work. If you productize, you just need to train them to sell the product. It's very much easier. You're essentially simplifying the process. A product is a tool. Now, good, better, and best is where this all started some years ago, and you can still do that. But we've moved on a lot since then. There's a thing now called a flavor of recruitment, and it basically means at the heart of it is what you offer. It's fine, good, better, and best if you want. Increasingly, products have just got one offering. This is it. This is what we do. If you want it, you can buy it here, but if you don't, go somewhere else. Right? But the case for it is so strong, and what fits around that product, the flavoring that fits around it, makes it an attractive proposition, and the client begins to see the benefits to them of going retained. Now, if you can't do that, like I said, the chances of being successful are pretty slim, quite frankly. So you need to be focusing on the benefits. So what are the benefits? Well, at any particular job role, there's about 20% of people in that job role, roughly, and it does vary, of course, but go with 20%, who are actively looking for a new job to a greater or lesser extent, which means that if a recruiter approaches them, sends them a LinkedIn message or an email or rings them up, picks the phone up, really, how 1990s is that? And yet it works. But if they do that, then they're much more likely to respond positively because they're looking for a job. Okay, that's the deal with them. They're on the job boards, they're looking at adverts, they're on LinkedIn all the time, they're very open to it. Most contingent recruiters can only feed off that group, because to go out to the next group of 20% who are not actively looking for a job, but could be interested if you present the right job to them. Now, they're the people that if you can reach that group, it puts you into a much less, what they call red water, it's blue water. There's not a lot of agencies in there nipping away trying to get these people to come to their roles. There's less there because they're harder to get. On average, six attempts to speak to them, emails, telephone calls, messages. And then when you get to speak to them, there's less of them that will agree to then go forward for a shortlist because that role has to be very right for them. But these are the people that you can get only if you're retained or exclusive, because it's more expensive for you to do it. So you have to be paid for that work. You need to explain that to the client. He or she is going to get a much wider range of candidates than they would normally get from contingent. And the qualification, this is the second point, is much deeper. So in contingent, you can only afford to do a certain amount of qualification because you've only got a certain amount of time before, if you haven't submitted the CV, another agency has nipped in and done it for you, and you've lost the opportunity. In retained, you can take as much time as you want to qualify that person, which means the quality of the shortlist is much greater. It's a better quality shortlist, which means the client likes it and is more likely not only to take that person from you, but also give you the next role that comes up because you've been very professional about it. It's not rushed. You've got the time to search wider and qualify deeper. That is a benefit to the client, particularly if what they're trying to find, the person they're trying to find, is harder to get hold of, there's less of them about, or it takes a lot more effort to prize them out of their existing role and move them over to you. That the only way that you can successfully do that is retained or at a push exclusive. So when I don't think I've done too badly in 6 minutes to explain that.
No, you've done it. I'm going to summarise in a second.
So the whole point of this really is productize first, and you've got to go beyond good, better, and best. It's important to realise that now because everybody's doing that, right? So pretty much everybody, particularly at the top end, search people are doing it now, pretty much all of them, and lower down now to the middle tier, they're doing it as well. So you really have to productise, and it has to be the new flavour of productisation, which brings a lot more to it. And then you have to be utterly able to present that product in a very convincing way. You also need proof. You need some clients to say, you know, that thing they say they do, well, they do it. Right, so you've got that credibility. And lastly, you need to be able to train people who haven't perhaps got the gravitas, the experience, the knowledge, the skills to do it, to sell the product. Once you do that, it makes it significantly easier to turn somebody who's not really sure about retained or exclusive into seeing the benefits and saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. And also paying not just the amount that you want, because you're not going to get out of bed really for less than 20%, but also to pay in stages, as we talked about earlier, as Paul pointed out quite rightly in his comment earlier.
So to quickly summarise that, move away from saying, if you pay me more, I'll do more, and move more towards, given your scenario, if you make me do contingent, this is what will happen. But if you let me do this, this is what will happen. But I'm not going to do that unless you pay me a little bit because I can't.
Yeah, why would I? There is a barrier, you know. What? It's not. I can't. Economically, you can't do it. It doesn't work. The model doesn't work.
And most people are reasonable. This is how it works. When people do it successfully, the person goes, "Oh yeah, I can see that."
But if they feel they can get the person they want in the bloodbath that is contingent, well, fine, do that then. They're the wrong client for you. Move on, because there is somebody out there that will see the benefit. They don't want to be deluged with CVs and phone calls and agents and just the whole thing out of control. They just want one person to handle that process from beginning to end and make a good job of it. They're the people that you want, you know. But again, that also, not only have you got a product, you've got to have more prospects. You've got to be prepared to have more prospects, because then you can say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But thank you for the opportunity. So can I just very quickly just outline something that we've got coming up, which touches both?
You can, and then we're going to come to Barry's top tip, everybody. So which I'm very excited about.
Okay. This is only, we decided to do this just before the show. Actually, it wasn't planned. It's just that we've got a couple of one-day growth summits in person. Got a couple there in Birmingham, and there'll be some more next year. One of those is in November, and one's, I think, in January. And the reason I mention it is we're going to look at productization at quite some depth. And we're also going to talk about business development, how you get your product in front of more people, amongst a lot of other things. If you would like that, a link, just a link to that, just email Growth Summit to me, and oh, look, it says Growth Summit email link. Yeah, just Growth Summit will be fine, and we will send you the link to that Growth Summit, or Peter will also put it in the comments as well. So hopefully that's not too much of a bother.
Right. So thank you, Mike. So now let's come to Barry's top tip, which I'm very excited about because it features some fancy Latin, which I think we got down. I can't pronounce it, Barry, but could you give us this in your best lawyer speak?
No, so when you pronounce Latin in law, you have to do it with the most English possible pronunciation. You don't try to sound like a Roman. Yeah, so you go with non dimidium asinum. Pure, full English, no messing about. But I think you've also got the translation, which will be some recruiters. Yeah. Yeah, so don't half-ass it. Is the point.
I understand that, Barry. Yeah,
that makes more sense.
Exactly. Speak to the room, right? So let's talk about building the product, understanding the offering, understanding how to sell it. But then what's really important in the background to that as well, because it all comes as part of the ecosystem, is to structure it right from a contractual perspective. The most disputes we see within retained, is when a recruiter who is ostensibly a contingent recruiter, whose terms of business are contingent terms, will bodge it. So they'll go, oh, I might be able to sell a retainer here, and they'll agree something, and that something might be a quick exchange of emails, or it might be a conversation around it. But then ultimately, the underpinning contract is their contingent terms, and contingent terms of business are not suitable. Put it as plainly as that, they are not suitable for retained search. Yeah? Retained search is a completely different beast. However you're structuring it, whether you're having an activation fee, a shortlist fee, and then an engagement fee, whether you're having, I can't remember who it was that commented earlier, having breaks on it to allow you to, get out of jail free if the job can't be filled, whether your client's disengaging, whether your client cancels the search, all of those different things should trigger the next stage of the fee or the remainder of the fee, or however it is you structure it. Your contingent terms won't do that. Your contingent terms, broadly speaking, will say you hire someone, we charge you, this is the percentage, and we charge against base or we charge against rem.
I'm guessing it might cover as well if a client takes someone from their website or from somewhere else, it covers all of that contingent too.
Exactly. So a contingent, a retained search, at its very essence, should be an exclusive arrangement. But true exclusivity, not you're the recruiter that I've told is exclusive today, but actually you're the only recruiter working on this. And it should also ideally go to the next level of exclusivity, which is that we won't be searching internally. Yeah, or anybody that comes to us internally to refer to application, we will pass that person to you for you to run the process. And also,
which is much easier to convince someone to do if you've managed to put together a product that says, I'm doing all of these things to make sure they're the right person.
Exactly, because we will be running the recruitment process. And that's what somebody said it to me once, you're selling the search, not the bum on the seat.
Yes.
So that's what you're selling within retained. So if the offering of, if you get any direct applicants, it's not positioned as you must send them to us. It's we will manage them within the process for you. Yeah, so that's a sales process. But what you're really saying is, if you hire someone directly, we still get paid because you're paying us for that retained piece. And because otherwise it just doesn't work commercially, as Mike said. If you're putting the time and effort into a proper retained search where you're market mapping and you're figuring things out and doing the search fully, you need to have certainty that you're getting paid at the end of that. What you don't want is they retain you on a search, but they're just using it as a beauty pageant because they've got an internal candidate they're already thinking about. And they want to get to that place where they just hire someone internally, or they move someone sideways, or they've already got a direct applicant, or whatever it might be. And another thing I see not done well, there's a few things that aren't done well in retained terms, but cancellation fees, making sure you've got those, defining cancellation broadly enough that it doesn't actually require the client to say we are cancelling the search. But if they disengage, if they act in such a way, or if the search and having search completion being defined broadly enough that it includes if they hire somebody internally or directly
So if
been
I
on your
could summarize
shortlist.
all of this, Barry, would I be right in saying get the terms done proper?
Definitely. And whether that's us or whether that's somebody else, it doesn't matter. Just get them done right. Because
I mean,
ultimately,
ChatGPT. Just ChatGPT. Just
that's
no, Barry. Oh, okay.
as a litigator, I love ChatGPT because I've started to see contracts come through in disputes where people have clearly used ChatGPT to draft their terms.
No, don't listen to Barry. Whatever Barry charges, Pete and Chat will undercut him. Yeah.
I'll do it for 50 quid in a beer.
Brilliant.
Two bob
And then I'll get instructed to go and unravel it afterwards, which is great fun.
And then I get a kickback from Barry in a beer. No, okay, right, guys. I am going to have to draw a line because we are at 1 o'clock. We have overrun. So, Barry, thank you very much for all of this. It's been fabulous. You've demonstrated a depth and breadth of knowledge that's wonderful. If people want to explore more around the things you do, so clawing back fees, terms of business around their products, etc., best way is to connect with you on LinkedIn.
I live on LinkedIn like our clients. So you'll find me on there. I'm not the caddy salesman in Texas, by the way, if you're searching on my name there. I'm the lawyer guy.
The lawyer guy. Reclaw. We're looking for Barry at Reclaw. Okay. And Mike, very quickly, what's next week's show?
Okay. We're doing webinars next week. Now, don't go, oh, that's not for me. Webinars are not necessarily what you think. And they are probably now in the current market, I would say, one of the most powerful new business development tools to win high value clients that I know. And unfortunately, we have Mr. Webinar himself who's joining us, God help us, because he runs webinars for people. So he does sadly know quite a bit about it. But if you're interested in how you can leverage this and how you can make it work for you, please join us next week. I think you'll be quite pleasantly surprised.
So one thing I spotted, your imagery earlier about your Birmingham show, the bottom left corner, it said it was sold out, but I'm pretty sure it's not actually sold out. Is that right?
No, it's not. One of the dates is, we've been pushing people. That was the 1st of November. That one is no longer available. It's full now. We've just released, thank you, Barry, we've just released another date to kind of compensate for that. So there's 2 dates on there for you to go and have a look at. So there are still dates available. So thank you, Barry, for making that point. And what I will do now is I will wrap up the show. Barry, thank you so much for being a fabulous and insightful guest, as always would be.
Thanks for having me on.
You were here. Thank you. That's all right.
Yeah,
Kirsty, C, we don't need you. All right, I can do this. So brave when she's not there. Right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will say goodbye.
Okay.